you guys are doing well. Getting ready for preseason game 2.
Speaking of preseason game 2, you've got obviously a really good competition at defensive tackle. Probably all those guys are good enough to make a roster somewhere. What are you looking for when you comes on the touchdown day among those guys?
Yeah, Bill, that is a really good group, and they've been, I think the effort level there has been really good, and they've been performing, each and every day. And those big guys, when you have more than enough, that's very unusual, and so we're excited about those guys. But yeah, I think it's just with the opportunities they're given, because they're not all given the same. Performing at a high level, making plays, and again, that position sometimes, your job isn't to go make the play. Sometimes it's to allow others to make plays and doing what the coaches are asking them to do. So I think it's just that, but they've all done a really nice job.
At that position, you can have a variety of different skill sets within that group. So I guess how do you weigh what each player might bring individually versus overall?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you'd love for guys to be super versatile and be able to do everything, but you're going to need some of those guys that are, in the 320, 325 range to be able to, hunker down at the nose. At the same time, get in there and getting up the field and rushing the passer is important as well. So, again, if they can do them both, that's great, but that's not always the case. But you're going to, as the season goes, particularly, it's very hard to find those guys. We seem to have some pretty good depth there right now, including Jordan Riley, who will start the season on PUP. It's at the end of the day, it's just kind of figuring out, making sure you have enough versatility and balance in that room.
Ryan, did you maybe want to see Tucker back in team drills before talks advanced, and do you still expect something done before the start of the season?
Yeah, Matt, no, him getting back in the team drills really had no effect on anything, but it's good to see him out there. I mean, he's worked his tail off. Congratulations to him. I mean, these are little things that are big things, when you're coming off an injury, like he's coming off, and so I know he was really excited to get out there and join his teammates. As far as the contract goes, it doesn't have any really effect on that, and then no real updates there.
Brian, is it feasible to be able to keep 7 wide receivers? It seems like you have a couple of young players who could potentially step up there, but it's a crowded room.
I think it is. I mean, I think we've done that in the past, maybe once or twice. I'd have to go back and look. It may be a little tough to do that throughout the season, as injuries, mount, and you have to account for different positions. But I think coming out of camp, we've done that a few times. But I think if you're going to do that, there's going to be a couple of those guys are going to have to be pretty valuable teams guys, and I think we have some of those. So.
You famously released Chris Barnes or waived him, and he got through waivers and he got back, and you started him, or Matt started him week 1. When you get to those final decisions, how do you weigh out? Is it more important to keep maybe the guy that you like more, or is it maybe more important to keep the guy that you feel like maybe can clear waivers and or get back on the practice squad?
That's a good question. I think we've always talked about if you're going to try to get a guy through waivers, if you're going to release him, you have to kind of understand that you have to accept the fact that you may lose him, and you have to be okay with that. It's always a tough time because you're going to release players you don't want to, but you have to just because of the numbers and the rules. I do think there's a little bit of experience there of kind of understanding the league and understanding how teams are looking at your players. Certainly we look at them a certain way, but the rest of the league doesn't have the access to the practice tape, to the, how they act in meeting rooms, their injury histories, things like that. So we obviously have a different way we're looking at our players sometimes than the league does. We do go through some exercises towards the end just of, hey, if this is all you're looking at, is these 3 preseason games, this is all they have to look at, and this is what they're making a decision on. What is the likelihood you're going to pull the trigger on a claim or whatnot? So you do some of that, and obviously having experience in this, you kind of know there's a lot less claims than you really think that there are year to year. But at the same time, I think whenever you take that risk, you have to be willing to risk that player. So.
Right on the flip side of that, when you're looking at guys and you only have those 3 preseason games, how much are you relying on the work you did on those guys when they were coming out?
Yeah. Quite a bit. Our college guys, when they're out there, they do so much work and good work on not only the evaluations, but the background information, the medical stuff, personality stuff. So those are important to us, and we weigh heavily on that as we kind of narrow down some of the guys we might be looking at to claim or trade for. But that's important. At the same time, if they have a lengthy history in this league, that's going to override that.
Brian, what's impressed you the
most about Kyle McCord?
Yeah, I think, we talked, I think the last time I came here, we talked about the different, every day in practice and then, the different points, whether it's family night or now preseason games, how important it is to perform. Kyle is really diligent, he's really smart. He goes about it, he's very consistent day in and day out as far as his preparation. And then to see him perform well like that in the first preseason game was great to see, and credit to him. And, a lot of times when you get into those second half of preseason games, there's a lot of moving parts, maybe some moving parts you didn't even work with during that week of practice. So kind of to see him calm and be able to handle the different situations that he did was good to see.
I was going to ask about Kyle too. What do you recall from him coming out of Syracuse and Ohio State?
Yeah, so obviously, he bounced around a little bit. When he was at Syracuse that last year, I mean, he really led that team to a good season, and he had a great year. And he had a number of games where he was just, his accuracy and his poise were really impressive. So, again, when we had an opportunity to acquire him after the season, it just made some sense. I think he's growing in what Matt's asking him to do. I think this next game will be another step for him to see if he can add on to what he's already done. But, we were impressed with what he did.
When you decided to make the change at linebacker, bring in Zaire, what was it you were looking for from that position that maybe you hadn't gotten the last couple of years?
I wouldn't say that it's anything we hadn't gotten the last couple of years. I just think that when we realized that, Quay probably wasn't going to be back in Green Bay, I wanted to make sure that we had, someone who could step in and had already done it and played at a high level. Certainly Zaire has done that. And I also think, playing that middle linebacker spot, there's a bit of a personality and edge you have to have, and I think that can bleed into your team, and he has that, and I'm excited to see if he can kind of bring some of that to our football team.
Hey, Brian, do you think it makes a difference? I think McClellan, Burton, Dennis Sutton, they've all played, 4 more years of college, and
Yeah.
they're getting chances here now. Do you think that's relatable? I mean, do you think
Yeah.
that's part of why they're able to help you right now?
Yeah, Spoon, I think absolutely. I think particularly when you play at some of the places they played at for as long as they did, at a high level, whatever you get the opportunity to play longer like that, you're probably going to be more prepared to come into this league. When you're in the SEC, when you're in the Big Ten, when you're playing, every day in practice, when you're going against other professional prospects, so to speak, and every game you're going against probably pro players, the longer you can do that and the more you can develop, particularly at the big person, positions where, there's just some development and strength that has to occur there. So I do think that gives you an advantage. At the same time, we've seen plenty of 3-year guys come out and be really good players. So, but the world just doesn't have enough of those big guys that can move like that.
Brian, where do you think the cornerback competition is at this point in training camp?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're competing great. I think the groups, everybody's, when they're getting their opportunities, are performing well. I think there's been a lot of mix and matching. CV's been out for a little bit, and so they're moving guys around. But and that's what this time of year's for. Is kind of sometimes you're going to want to see a younger player go against better receivers to see how they do, and you're just moving guys around to kind of see how that works. So we're in that phase and just trying to get as much information on these guys as we can before we get to the regular season.
Having that edge like Zaire has, a guy like Keyshawn Nixon, it feels like he always plays with that edge and even has it off the field. How does that positively impact a team like this?
Yeah, I think it's important. I think you have to. We had a great practice a couple of days ago. I thought that the edge of our guys was just right where wasn't tipping over, but it was right where it needed to be. So that was really good to see. I think we're getting into that point where guys are getting conditioned well enough where they can play with that edge. Key's always answered the bell. Every time we've given him any opportunity, he's performed. And he's a very competitive dude. So, I think the more guys we can get like that, the better.
Brian, given how important left tackle is, how long does it take you to feel comfortable that Jordan is the guy?
Yeah, I think we're very comfortable with him there. Again, he's going to have to go out and do it over a full season and year in and year out. But he's done a really nice job through the spring. Really nice job so far. I'm looking forward to getting some more reps here in the preseason and then get ready for the regular season. But we think he's got a super bright future to be a really good player in this league. I'm sure he'll go through his ups and downs like they all do at that position, because that's one of those positions where you're gonna have some of that. But I'm excited for him.
Left guard next to him with Jager Burton. It seems like you guys have been really pleased with what he's done since he's been here. Going back to the draft and your evaluation of him, was he a guy you were surprised was there in the 5th round? Is he like up to expectations, exceeded expectations?
A little bit, a guy that played as much as he did and had the versatility to play center and guard, to be there then. But we were obviously very happy that he was there. But at the same time, I think, he's done a really nice job for us so far. And for me, it's just really exciting because, you have a guy, he's a young guy, he's only going to get better, who can play center and guard. That's, so those guys are hard to find.
Brian, was that 2024 draft class that you had with Morgan and Cooper and Williams, and they're poised to play a lot of significant roles this year and have already? Was there something you noticed with those guys in those 3 years in terms of growth? And is year 3 kind of a benchmark year that you look for a lot of those guys?
Yeah, I think year 3 is kind of a benchmark for a lot of players. We've always kind of, when you take a player, it's like, I think when you get to year 3, you kind of start to see what they are and what they're going to be for their time in the NFL. With those guys, I think a lot of it's been opportunity. They've just had the opportunity to go out there and play. And I think when you have an opportunity to go out there and play game after game, that really is beneficial. There's guys that come into this league that don't get that opportunity. It doesn't mean that they're lesser players. They just haven't had the opportunity to grow like that. You got to play in games to really, really grow. And those guys have those opportunities.
Brian, you talked a lot about patience with Trey. How much does Pittsburgh give you, validation and confidence that he's on the
Good performance from one day, right? That's what that is, and he's had a bunch of them during the camp. But that obviously was the most important one, right? That's the one that actually counts for points in a game. And I think in that environment, outside, those are what you want when you're trying to bring a young kicker along, and did a great job. So hopefully we can get Matt Ochek back here in a week or so and get him working with him as well. But because all that goes together. But he continues to kind of stay steady and keep working, and that's important.
Brian, you and Matt always talk about competition at every position. Is kicker one that you're still maybe shopping around in the preseason and in training camp that you might add one to the competition?
Yeah, I would certainly like to. Every time we get ready to we did that early in camp, and with a guy that we liked his talent, and then just numbers from numbers perspective as far as some other positions popped up, and we didn't feel we could continue to do that. We're kind of in that situation right now with just some of the injuries that we have and making sure we got enough guys to go out there and play this preseason game. I would like that, whether that happens during this training camp, whether we bring somebody on in the practice squad as we start the season. I would like to have 2 kickers along the way, whether that's all the time or we try some different guys out. But I think we're pretty confident in Trey right now going into the season, but there's still a long ways to go. So.
2 more, please.
Hey, Ryan, just with,
Sorry.
go ahead.
You talked earlier about everything you have to evaluate versus what other teams have to evaluate for your guys. How has that evaluation evolved? You've got only 1 cut down now, you've got fewer preseason games, fewer padded practices. How have you kind of evolved on that, and where do you think your process is at now?
Yeah, I think the 1 cut down is phenomenal. I hated the 2 cut downs because you were cutting guys that were going to play 60 snaps in that last game, and then so you ended up having to play a lot of guys you weren't maybe going to play, or you were trying to rest to get healthy for the regular season. So the one cut down is very beneficial. The 1 less preseason game, it's another missed opportunity to evaluate these guys and when in a competitive situation that for us watching the tape and building your emergency boards and things like that, it's just another opportunity you don't have. So, but our guys do a great job. There was one time, at times, we still go out and we send scouts to these games, to look at things live. Not as much anymore, right? The technology and the tape is so good, we get it so fast. We don't need to do as much of that, but we still do some of that, particularly when we're kind of maybe looking at certain players particularly. So it's changed a little bit, but not a lot. I mean, it's just, it's funny that the most scouted game in every year is the Hall of Fame game, because we're the pro scouts are so starved, and then we get the one game and they watch it 4 times that week before the next preseason week. So, but it's funny, but this week's always fun because you have 16 games to watch and a bunch of young players to watch and see how they're doing, and so it's a long process, but it's a fun process, and it really does what we do over the next 3 weeks here really well impact our football team going forward, because how we build our emergency board maybe some claims, trades, whatever might happen, but how we build our mental and how we're going to get through the year is really built off this preseason for the most part.
A young guy like Marshawn just to finally take the field, and I know it was a small sample size, but just to get his energy out there, he's always smiling, seems like, what was that like just to kind of get him back in the groove and hopefully get him up to full speed?
Yeah, all you guys that have been around know, when players miss time, that's tough. That's tough on these guys. They're young guys, and they want to be out there so badly. You kind of saw Tuck get out there for the first time the other day, no different than Marshawn. When they get out there and they're playing football, they're usually at their happiest, so whenever you see guys go through things and then get back out there, you can kind of see the joy in them, and I'm happy for him. He's doing a great job with his opportunities. I think he's got a chance to help us this year, which would be great. But yeah, I do know, doing this as long as I've done it, it's really, really tough on these guys when they're out. And none of them want to be there. They want to be out there on the field competing with their teammates because they love the game. And so when they finally get that chance to get back out there and things start going well, it's neat to see.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, guys.